In this week's news, angry scenes after Pakistan church bombings, mass baptisms in Central America, and Christian artists celebrate faithful creativity.
This is InFocus Christian News and Current Affairs.
A devastating church bombing attack by an ISIS-affiliated group in Pakistan earlier this month has left at least 17 people dead and 70 wounded. According to the Religious Liberty Prayer Bulletin, the shooting and bombing attacks on the two churches, one Protestant and one Catholic, happened during packed Sunday worship services in Lahore. Witnesses say the death toll would have been much higher if volunteer security guards hadn't physically tackled the suicide bombers, preventing them from getting into the church buildings before the bombs were detonated. Violent protests erupted in the wake of the attacks, with an angry mob from the Christian community killing two men they believe to be connected with the attacks. Media attention in the wake of tropical cyclone Pam has been on Vanuatu, but a number of other South Pacific nations were also affected by the Category 5 storm. According to UN News, the government of Tuvalu has declared a state of emergency after 42% of its population was affected by flooding from cyclone-related tidal surges. Tuvalu is dominated by the Congregational EKT Church, which has links with the Uniting Church in Australia.
We have appealed to the Christian communities in the international arena to respond as Christian brothers and sisters. Also last week we dedicated that Sunday for Cyclone Pam in remembering those who have been affected, not only here in Tuvalu, but also extended to our Pacific brothers and sisters.
In what's thought to be an historic first, a Catholic archbishop has been charged with concealing child sexual abuse. According to the ABC, the allegations go back to the 1970s, when the now Archbishop of Adelaide, Philip Wilson, was serving as a priest in New South Wales' Maitland Diocese. The claim is that he failed to pass along claims to police that a fellow priest had abused a child. Archbishop Wilson has denied the allegation and says he will fight the charges. 5 Australians struggling with poverty have shared morning tea and a chat with politicians at Parliament House in Canberra. The meeting was organised by Uniting Church Minister, the Reverend Bill Cruz, who heads up the Exodus Foundation in Sydney. Each of the 5 guests of the morning tea brought his or her unique situation to the table: homelessness, mental illness, addiction. The hosts were veteran government MP Philip Ruddock and opposition Senator Sam Dastyari. The Reverend Cruz says politicians need to look beyond the middle-class voting bloc to the worsening problems faced by Australia's poor. Massive evangelistic efforts in Central America have seen more than 6,000 people baptized into Jesus and accepted into the Seventh-day Adventist Church in recent weeks. According to Adventist Review, 2,500 were baptized in Panama, 2,000 in Nicaragua, and 1,500 in El Salvador in connection with separate evangelistic meeting series. In Guatemala, a 110-year-old man was born again through baptism. Some claim he's the oldest person ever to be baptized by an Adventist pastor. The Inter-American Division, with its 3.7 million members, is the largest of the Adventist Church's 13 world regions. Adventist young people also went large-scale last weekend in celebrating Global Youth Day.
In our towns, in our countries, in our world. In 24 hours, 8 million youth made an impact in others' lives, bringing the gospel to our communities through acts of kindness. This year, we can do more.
Under the theme, Be the Sermon, youth groups around the world skipped church and put a new spin on the expression church service, reaching out to their communities in various ways. A continuous webcast of the post-service celebrations came from 19 locations around the world during a 24-hour period.
The commission has been given. It's time to go. We have been called for such a time as this. We are an end-time generation with end-time DNA, riding on 3 angels' wings. Call us end-time SDA.
A new movie project on one of the biggest religious freedom stories of 2014 has run into trouble and been cancelled, even before the cameras were able to start rolling. Mariam Ibrahim was sentenced to death in Sudan last year for the crime of converting from Islam to Christianity. After an international outcry, she was released and allowed to leave the country. Last week, filmmakers wanting to dramatize her story complained of discrimination after Facebook rejected the fundraising ad for the movie I Am a Christian. But according to Christian Post, complaints from Mariam Ibrahim herself eventually scuttled the project. She said the filmmakers were exploiting her and had received no permission to use her story. And in another fundraising fail, a social media backlash has prompted Creflo Dollar Ministries in the USA to scale down requests for donations to purchase a $65 million private jet. The International Evangelist's current plane is 30 years old and, after a near miss during takeoff, is now considered unsafe.
For over 20 years, you've been a part of getting Creflo Dollar Ministries to distant lands to share the truth of the gospel.
We have offices on multiple continents, and our ministry stretches across television, personal appearances, and meeting the needs of people all over the world. So a plane is a vital part of the mission of our ministry.
This fundraising video is no longer on the Creflo Dollar Ministries website, along with any specific mention of the project. Composers, writers, filmmakers and other creative types gathered at Avondale College north of Sydney last weekend to consider the challenge of faithful creativity. Local and international speakers with real-world experience in using the arts to communicate the message of Jesus were featured at this year's Manifest Creative Arts Festival. An awards ceremony recognised both established and up-and-coming artists. The premier prize, the Gabe Reno Award, went to New Zealand's Jeremy Dixon, whose creativity in the culinary arts, photography and book design was recognised. Jeremy brings the message of holistic living to New Zealanders through his Revive cafes and healthy recipe books. And maybe Jeremy needs to take a trip to the Pacific Islands, where it seems pastors are leading the way to obesity, diabetes, and an early death. At a recent meeting of more than 120 Adventist pastors in Fiji, health checks revealed that only 7 were at their ideal weight, and almost half were at risk of diabetes. The problem? Too much sitting in church meetings and being the honoured guest at potluck dinners and other special events. The pastors from Fiji, Samoa, Solomon Islands and elsewhere have agreed to take on a 4-month weight loss challenge by changing their lifestyle, eating healthier, eating less and exercising more. And that's it for this week's news. Thanks so much for watching. Until next week, God bless.